Why power prefers soft edges instead of sharp force. Force announces itself. It draws lines, provokes resistance, and creates enemies instantly. Power learned long ago that what is visible is also vulnerable. For centuries, authority relied on sharp edges. Armies, decrees, punishment, compliance was demanded, and obedience was measured publicly. But the world changed. Today, force triggers backlash faster than results. Every command is questioned, every display is recorded, and every act of dominance creates a counterweight. This is why modern power evolved. Among elite sheiks, influence no longer moves through pressure. It moves through softness, through flexibility, through options that feel voluntary. To understand why this matters now, we need context. The global system is saturated with power claims. Governments compete for legitimacy. Corporations compete for trust. Individuals compete for attention. In this environment, sharp force fails quickly. It creates clarity, but also conflict. And conflict accelerates exposure. Soft power behaves differently. It does not demand compliance. It shapes preference. It does not block movement. It redirects it. At first, this looks weaker. Soft edges appear negotiable. Flexible boundaries seem uncertain. But that perception is intentional. Soft power did not emerge by accident, nor did it appear as a philosophical choice. It emerged because sharp force began failing too publicly, too predictably, and too expensively to sustain long-term control. Every rigid system creates friction. Every visible command invites resistance. And every act of pressure teaches others exactly where to push back. The sheiks understood that force creates memory. People remember humiliation longer than loss. They remember coercion longer than consequence. And memory is where opposition is born. So instead of tightening control, power learned to loosen its grip deliberately, slowly, and selectively, not to give freedom, but to reshape how freedom is experienced. Soft edges do not eliminate boundaries. They disguise them. When access feels gradual instead of blocked, frustration weakens. When limitation feels circumstantial instead of imposed, anger dissolves into adaptation. And when restriction feels temporary, people stop organizing against it. This is how compliance becomes internal. The sheiks watched how rigid empires collapsed under their own clarity. Everyone knew where power stood. Everyone knew what it wanted. And everyone knew exactly what they were resisting. Soft power erased that clarity. Rules became guidelines. Orders became incentives. Obligations became opportunities. Nothing felt forced, yet outcomes aligned consistently. This flexibility created psychological exhaustion among challengers. You cannot fight what does not confront you. You cannot protest what does not announce itself. And you cannot overthrow what appears accommodating. Soft edges absorb pressure instead of reflecting it. Criticism enters the system and disappears without trace. Opposition diffuses into dialogue. Momentum dissolves into process. This is not weakness. It is load distribution. Rigid power carries stress at the surface. Flexible power spreads stress across the structure until it loses intensity. And because nothing feels urgent, nothing feels worth resisting. However, softness also creates ambiguity. And ambiguity creates opportunity for exploitation. If power appears too flexible, others begin testing limits. If boundaries feel negotiable, challengers probe for collapse. If authority feels optional, legitimacy can erode. This is where soft power becomes dangerous to itself. The sheiks recognized this risk early. They understood that softness must be paired with inevitability. That flexibility must still lead somewhere. And that choice must still converge toward a single outcome. Soft power works only when all paths feel open, but all roads still lead to the same destination. That is the hidden discipline behind gentle control. Because softness is not the absence of structure. It is structure disguised as permission. And the moment others realize this, the game changes completely. That realization would soon trigger a new phase, one where soft power faced those who learn to exploit softness itself. And that is where the real conflict begins. The conflict emerged when softness stopped being mistaken for generosity and began being tested as vulnerability. Those on the outside started to sense flexibility not as invitation, but as weakness waiting to be exploited. Boundaries were pushed carefully at first. Small demands, incremental pressure, requests framed as reasonable. Soft power invited conversation, and conversation created openings. Challengers learned that rigid authority responds predictably, but flexible authority requires interpretation, and interpretation creates space. They tested delays. They tested patience. They tested how far accommodation could stretch before snapping. At first, the system absorbed it. Responses remained calm. Access stayed open. Tone never hardened. This reinforced the illusion that softness could be bent indefinitely. But softness was never unlimited. It was conditional. Behind the appearance of choice, parameters existed, invisible but precise. Crossing them did not trigger reaction. It triggered exclusion. This is where misunderstanding proved costly. Those who pushed too far did not face confrontation. They simply stopped being relevant. Meetings slowed. Channels closed quietly. Opportunities dissolved without explanation. There was no punishment to protest, no authority to challenge, no decision to appeal. This is how soft power enforces boundaries without spectacle. Resistance failed because it had no target. Anger dissipated because nothing appeared to oppose it. Momentum collapsed because access, not force, was a currency. But the tension escalated as more actors tested limits. The system faced saturation. Too many probes. Too many assumptions of flexibility. Soft power risked being interpreted as infinite tolerance. Internally, this triggered recalibration. Flexibility needed reinforcement, not through aggression, but through clarity. The sheiks understood that softness without consequence invites erosion. The system had to demonstrate that paths existed, but not all paths were equal. So they introduced subtle friction. Timelines shifted. Requirements increased quietly. Processes gained complexity. Without explanation, nothing appeared punitive. But movement slowed for those misaligned. This selective resistance restored balance. Those inside adjusted instinctively. Those outside felt confusion. The system remained soft, but no longer porous. This phase revealed the truth behind gentle power. Soft edges are not weak edges. They're adaptive edges. They bend under pressure, then return to form once the pressure passes. But the world was still learning, and as understanding grew, a more serious challenge emerged. Not exploitation, but imitation. Others began copying the strategy. And once everyone becomes soft, softness itself loses advantage. That was the next threat, because when gentleness becomes common, power must evolve again, or be mistaken for nothing at all. The climax arrived when softness stopped being rare. What once felt disarming became familiar. Flexibility spread. Accommodation became policy. Gentle language replaced hard boundaries everywhere. And suddenly, softness no longer stood out. This was a danger. When everyone claims to be flexible, flexibility stops signaling power. It starts signaling indecision. The sheiks responded without reversing course. They did not return to force. They refined softness into something sharper. Soft edges gained weight. Options still appeared open, but consequences became faster. Accommodation remained, but patience shortened quietly. This was a shift. Soft power stopped inviting exploration. It started rewarding alignment immediately. Those who understood the system moved smoothly. Those who tested it experienced friction instantly. No warnings, no explanations, just outcomes. This preserved the illusion of choice while restoring authority. That was a revelation. Soft power is not kindness. It is efficiency. It removes resistance by making resistance pointless. It avoids conflict by making conflict unproductive. The strongest systems do not confront challengers. They exhaust them. By the time opposition organizes, energy is gone, focus is lost, access has vanished. This is why soft power endures. It does not win dramatically. It wins quietly. And by the time results are visible, there is nothing left to oppose. The resolution is clear. Sharp force creates enemies. Soft power creates participants. And participants defend the system because they believe they belong to it. That belief is the final control. In the modern world, the most effective power does not demand loyalty. It designs environments where loyalty feels like choice. And that is why power prefers soft edges. Not because it is weaker, but because it is harder to fight. Why